Hello, everybody. There's 6 people there now. Hello. Hi.
No, I'm just kidding. It's actually working. How about that? Hello, Pete.
Hi, Pete.
And Tish.
And Tish. Hi there.
Welcome. Let's do a
and Jennifer.
Shout outs. Hello, Jennifer.
And let's see. And Grant. Hey, Grant.
Hey, Grant.
I'm seeing people I like here.
Good to see
people who've been
here.
active over on the group and sharing their hearts, and I love it.
On this journey called love.
That's right. Crazy little thing called love. Called love. Anyway. Is that Bare Naked Ladies? What's the name of that group that did that?
I don't know. Someone might know. Oh, they like us too.
You like us too? Aw, shuckums. We'll get going in just a minute.
About 30 seconds.
About 30 seconds.
Should be starting time. We could really start whenever we want.
Whenever we want. That's right. Or not at all. We could just go to the movies.
I'm going to sip tea.
Hmm.
I hope the weather is not awful wherever you all are. We got sunshine today in LA, which isn't usually newsworthy, but today it is.
And insane amounts of cold. The day, it's
been pretty miserable. I mean,
ice in my office.
Maybe not compared to some of the climates you all hail from.
Grand Rapids, Michigan, or something like that. But it's
I don't mean to sound, ungrateful, but it's been like in the 40s, even the 30s at night. Sometimes the 30s. Come on, you have to admit that's cold. No matter where you are, that is cold.
It's cold.
I halfway expected to see snow on the lawn. Okay.
Okay, so
sunshine and snow.
Sunshine and snow. So we're about ready to go?
All right. It is the top of the hour.
Okay.
Welcome
back to the Soulmate Process.
Week 2.
Been watching people over in the group on Facebook. Make sure to join the Facebook group if you're not already a member. And people have been active answering the questions that we had set up. So what I wanted to do was to first go over the most basic premises that we're working on. Yes. And let's see. What are they? They are 5 steps. Let's see.
We're going to share our screen with you.
Boom. First, what is a soulmate? It's a matter of lasting love. Male, female, non-binary. I don't care. It's possible you have more than one soulmate at a time in the course of your life, but we're going to work with the idea of just getting one.
One at a time.
One at a time.
I mean,
it's difficult enough.
If you've lost a soulmate, that there's no hope for ever finding love again. We absolutely do not believe that's true.
And if you're interested in a poly relationship, God bless you. But if we're going to teach you how to juggle, we're going to start with 3 balls rather than 6. So,
or in this case, just 2. Okay, go on. I was not making a pun.
Of course not.
Wow.
Okay.
Is that where you went?
Here are the 5 steps. So we're going to go and we're going to get off of this so that we are kind of front and center here. Hi, hello. Steve Barnes, and this is my good lady wife.
We are authors and screenwriters and parents and collaborators, and we've been married for 20 years after a whirlwind long-distance relationship that frankly was mostly via email and phone because he lived in Washington State and I lived in Miami.
It was tough. It required a lot of trust.
Sure did.
I remember one of my teachers said that, do not trust people. Instead, rely upon them to do what they perceive as being in their self-interest. It's up to you to be able to figure out what that is. In general, the better you know yourself, the easier it is to trust other people. It's easier, and there are other things that we will talk about probably in later weeks.
Sure.
But being able to trust other people, being able to trust yourself, being able to love yourself, being able to love another human being, these are the component parts of what we're talking about. So let's take a look at the 5 steps. These are the 5 pieces we're going to be working with over the weeks soon to come.
And these are the steps that we discussed last week. First, love yourself. Hopefully, you've been working on that. It's not the kind of step that you can just sort of square away in a week. So expect to have to keep working on that component, but it's very, very important to understand your value going forward if you're going to try to find a relationship.
I can tell you that after I took a huge hit to my ego and my heart some years ago, meditating, trying to clean out that space. My mind created a visual metaphor of cleaning out a basement. There was a crack in the floor of the basement, and it's like the basement was over a cesspool, and the corruption from the cesspool was oozing up into the basement. And so every day when I was meditating, I had to go in there and clean out the slime. And it seemed like there was an infinite amount of it. But after, I mean, literally took months, and finally it started, diminishing and diminishing and diminishing. And then I could clean the floor, and then I could patch the floor. It eventually happened. But all I'm saying is that if you've been dealing with a low self-esteem, a low sense of yourself for a very long period of time,
a series of toxic relationships, whether they were with family or romantic partners.
Absolutely. And make no mistake, the relationships that you are in, the things that you learn when you're in a high energy state, go deep. So that means the way someone treated you, if you're in an intense sexual relationship, intense emotional relationship with them, this becomes survival drive stuff. It can be very difficult to heal those things. Do not underestimate the difficulty, because loving yourself is the first step. Because what we're going to be looking into is going to be so confrontational if you're not careful, that if you don't love yourself, if you don't honor yourself, you don't believe that deep inside you there is something absolutely precious, you will turn away from this path.
Absolutely. And, this is the most difficult part of the process for me. And my path toward cleaning out my basement was in part therapy, journaling. Lord knows I leaned on friends. Whatever your path is, make it something. Don't just assume you can snap your fingers and say, oh, I love myself now. Because even after you've heard all of this, even while you're in therapy, in some ways you can see how much farther the goalpost is than rather how much closer it is. Like the more work you do, the more work you discover you have to do, kind of thing. It takes time.
Well, it's because you get down to the real stuff. There's the surface bubble, and then once that pops, there is the real thing. And what we want is for you to have a deep, real, anchored sense of being as worthwhile as any human being who's ever walked the planet. The only cost of having that level of self-esteem is that you don't get to feel that you're better than anybody else. You don't have to feel that you're better than anybody to set boundaries in terms of the kind of person that you might have a relationship with. Someone says, you don't think I'm good enough for you? Well, one key is not necessarily not good enough for a given lock, but the keys and the locks have to fit.
Yes,
you have to fit. You have to be synchronized with someone, or else, and so don't let people guilt trip you about this. And once again, this relates to would you want your own most beloved child to be in a relationship with this person? Unless you can say yes with a whole heart. Ask yourself, why are you in that relationship?
So here's the juggling act we are asking you all to accomplish as you undertake this course with us. Love yourself means, and you will not want to hear this, learning how to be happy with yourself, even outside of being in a relationship. But wait a minute, this is a soulmate course. I'm trying to find that person I know. But let's go back. Loving yourself also means being happy with who you are when you're not in a relationship. And if you've heard this saying, you probably want to slap the last person who said it. You'll find it when you're not looking for it. People say that because it's true. Okay, so we know deep down you are looking for it. But what were you about to say?
Well, it's just part with that you have to keep your attention on the things you can control. You cannot control whether a specific person is going to love you, or whether or not you're going to meet the person that you're supposed to be with on a particular day. You can control the things you do. To a certain degree, it's a little bit like sales, where you know that you have to knock on 100 doors to get 3 sales. If you know that you'll get 3 sales after you knock on 100 doors, you're not going to take it personally if 97% of the people slam the door in your face. It's just the process that you're going through.
The person who's ready to buy will recognize your sales pitch and the enthusiasm, and will see you.
That's right.
And that's what happens in relationships too. When you're happy with yourself, you walk around with a degree of confidence. Someone wants to share that joy with you, rather than you expecting to find that joy from someone else.
Absolutely. So that's, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When the lover is ready, the beloved will appear. So the question is, how do you get ready? How do you both take care of yourself so that you don't care if somebody, you know, so it doesn't matter on any survival level.
Man, I'm going to tell you, just to be perfectly honest.
Yes, let's hear it.
After I started doing all of my work, after I'd been in therapy for a while and found the joy and, like the psychic said, become who you're supposed to become, I wanted to be a writer. So I was finding a lot of joy in my writing. I had a townhouse as a single woman, and I was loving it. I was loving living alone. If you're a writer, you understand what I'm talking about. That sound, what's that sound? Oh, silence. That sound. From the minute you wake up till the minute you go to bed, unless the phone rings or something, you are deciding if there is even any noise in your space. That's a lot of power, okay? Maybe some of you are sick of that power, but let me tell you, that's a power that changes when you're living with other people. And my longest relationship before meeting Steve was, I had a boyfriend for about 4 years. I was very young. I wasn't like looking for marriage or whatever, or 4 years is a super long time to be dating someone without feeling like you're actually going somewhere. But we were fun. I was fine just dating. It never even dawned on me to want to live with him. And it never dawned on him to ask me to live with him. I think we both liked living alone. And if we were going to live together, we might as well get married. It's kind of the way I was feeling about it. I know a lot of people like to move in without marriage.
Yeah, I was up for that, but she was having none of it.
I'm like, what? Shoot, I got this silence. So if you want something other than, silence, put a ring on it, baby. Put a ring. That's actually just a mood ring, but still, it's the ring. So yeah, I was in that space. So when I had that dating incident with the guy right before I met Steve, where we went out a few times and I was being celibate and he wasn't about that, and that was cool. Yeah, I was looking for a more serious relationship than he was. We knew that. I mean, all of that was settled. It stung maybe this much, like a little mosquito prick, because grief is grief. Grief is just degrees. Sometimes it's big, sometimes it's small. Okay, so yeah, I felt a little like bitch, and then it was gone, and I was in my joy. And then I met Steve a week later because I was happy with myself. I wasn't willing to give up my plan and my principles to take a chance on this other guy. And because I wasn't all tied up emotionally and all up in emotional knots, when I met Steve, I was ready to meet Steve.
So I had a similar thing. The timing was really interesting. On the way back from the conference where we met, I had a date set up with a lady who I had a fantastic amount of attraction to. In fact, it was dealing with her. Let's call her Hazel.
Okay.
Dealing with Hazel that a lot of these, at least techniques were created, because I created what I now call the soulmate process out of desperation. And we're going to go over the steps really, really specifically, but in general, it was a matter of finding someone who was similar to what I was looking for and finding out what I would need to be in order to be in a relationship with her.
Right.
And because there was a lady who actually fit that bill. And on New Year's Day, 21 years ago, or maybe 22 years ago, I sat down with her and we talked it out. And I got some of the information I was looking for from her. We pretended, she was just coming out of a relationship. So I actually got to be in a relationship with her for a while, and I blew it completely. And it was in understanding how I blew that completely that the other piece of this came out. But I had a date set up with her on my way back from the conference where I met you.
Right.
And I took her out to dinner, and she was dressed to the nines, drenched in perfume, turning heads every which way at the restaurant, and very clearly thought I was going to make a move. And I had no interest.
Funny.
Because I'd met you.
Funny you mentioned that. My guy, Mr. Maybe we should see other people guy, who thought I was moving too quickly, invited me out on his boat after I met you, and I was like, I didn't even go. I didn't even go on his boat. So yeah. I figured that would
thing of knowing what you know when you know it.
So we were ready.
Yes, we were ready.
We knew what we wanted and what we didn't want.
And we trusted our instincts enough to both turn one group of people down.
Yes.
And to open our hearts to what was working. So that right. Trust comes from loving yourself, yes. Feeling worthy, beginning to understand how to trust your intuition. So hopefully you understand that we're being deadly serious. Don't move on with these other steps if you don't have something in place to help you deal with the first one. It
Right.
isn't that you have to be at some perfect place
Because there's
with
no
it.
such thing.
There
as a
is no
perfect
such thing.
place. Yes.
But be in therapy, have your meditation, have your journaling, have whatever it is that you're doing in play.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes we think we're ready to move on and we're not. You know, I had relationships before I met Steve. One had gone sour, and it was one of those come here, go away vibes that
Yeah.
was so attractive to me. And finally, he was like, go away. And I was like, oh, you mean really go away? So the next guy I dated, I realized later I was gaining strength by turning the tables and being that come here, go away woman. I was like that, reeling him in and like, oh, I don't know. And it was awful. And I was treating him not very nicely. And then I realized only later, I came to an epiphany maybe 6 months after we were seeing each other. And I went back to him. I said, look, I realize now what happened. I'm really sorry. And he was like, yeah, that's very interesting. I understand. But he had moved on. You know, that moment was
and good.
Right. He
and
wasn't
good.
supposed to be the one. But, and you know, so sometimes you'll be out there in the dating world and like, oh, I'm doing what my ex used to do.
Right.
And you might be getting even a comfort from that without realizing it.
Well, it can feel like power.
Yeah.
You know, feel like, you know, especially if there's a part of you that starts to resent the opposite sex or the same sex, if that's, you know, whatever it is you're dating, if you're starting to resent humanity, then you can feel like, well, why not pay them back?
Right.
You can feel. So let's go over these steps really
These are
quickly.
the ones that we mentioned last week.
We mentioned them last week. I'm going to put the screen share back on.
So
hit them.
So we've talked a lot about love yourself.
Love yourself.
All of this therapy, meditation, doing away with toxic habits, all of that is about love yourself. Love one other person. We're going to talk about that today. How do you conjure the other person? It's almost like a magic spell.
And then next week, it'll be understanding humanity without guilt, blame, or shame. And the week after that, it will be avoiding the friend zone.
Not that friends aren't precious, but if what you want is romantic relationships, you won't be satisfied.
Absolutely.
With platonic friendships.
You know, I wish I could give a copy of this to every incel out there because they don't understand the game. And without understanding it, you take it personally. And there's nothing personal about it.
And then how to win with integrity. There are lots of tips and tricks. The more you gain confidence and the more you're out in the dating world, the more you'll see that people react this way if you do that or this way if you do the other thing. But if you're ready to stop playing games and just be real with someone, that's how you win with integrity.
So we're about to get into the core of what this course is, and the rest of it, the conjuring, how it specifically works, and the rest of it will be how to do this. But we're about to give you the spell right now.
Secrets. Okay.
Okay.
So
the first step is you make a list of everything you really want in a partner.
Now, let me clarify. I don't mean sit there and think in your head everything you want in a partner. I mean, take a pen or a pencil. Let's do it old school. Don't even use a computer. Write it down on a piece of paper. Make it tactile. Make a list of what you really want in your partner and be completely honest. Don't worry about, oh, this sounds shallow or this sounds this or this is right. Just be honest with yourself. What do you really want? Ask for everything you want. Do not feel like your list is settling. Okay, this is your dream list. So if you're already settling and you're just making your dream list, that's not off to a good start.
That's right.
Everything you want. Be very specific too. The universe has a sense of humor. And the reason I say that is because on my list, and I'll talk more about what was on my list, I did not specify a regional location. And I lived in Miami and Steve lived in Washington State. And I was like, oh, very funny, universe. But I didn't say I wasn't willing to relocate, okay? So even though I wasn't consciously thinking, oh, yeah, I'll move anywhere in the country that was not conscious. But it turned out to actually be true. That considering that I moved to Washington State, which was about as different from Miami as different could be, I was pretty much willing to move almost anywhere in the country. And if that's true for you, put it on your list, you know. But if it's important for you that they be local or within the tri-state area, put that on your list. I'm serious. And believe you deserve the partner you're asking for. This is so important. It goes back to that first step of loving yourself. But if you look at that list and you're thinking, oh, I don't deserve that, go back to loving yourself. Go back to loving yourself. Or, as we'll talk about in the next step, how do you make yourself into the person who deserves a person on that list.
Well, this is critical, and
Right.
I just wanted to reinforce the notion that you need to be sure that what the person on that list is what you're really looking for. I knew a lady who did this, and she said, "Well, that technique doesn't work. I tried that and nothing happened." So I asked her about, she said, "I keep getting in these intense relationships, but they don't last." And I asked her, I said, "Does a person who can make a relationship last and is open to a lasting relationship, had you written that on your list?" And she did a Scooby take. I mean, it really was fascinating when she realized that she had asked for passion and honesty and beauty and power and all these different things, but she had not asked for somebody who wanted a lasting relationship and was available for one.
Yeah,
She'd shot herself in the foot.
So these are the kinds of things, to be honest, a lot of the things I put on my list were in reaction to things that had gone wrong in previous relationships, right? So like maybe probably top of my list was emotionally available. I had dated too many guys who were emotionally unavailable. That was what I found attractive about them. So I kept getting in these same pattern of relationships. So yeah, the first thing was they had to be emotionally available. Kind, of course, that was probably very high, if not number one. I wish I could find this list. I think I actually published it when I was a columnist for the dating column.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to see if I can find the actual published version, but I don't think they've digitized those years. Educated was important to me. I needed someone I could have a conversation with. I needed someone who was about my level of intellect. I knew that would be important to me. Some of you, that's not as important to you, but I knew that would be very important to me. I did want someone Black. I had a lot of interracial dating experience up to that point. Some feelings like maybe they were holding back a little bit more and I couldn't tell, is it the race or is it not the race, meeting the parents and the families. And it's like, you know what?
You said you wanted to simplify that aspect of your life.
It's hard enough for me already. Let me just try. If possible, it'll be great. Although the person I was dating right before I met Steve was not Black, but, Steve was Black, so he won. No, that's not it.
Is that all it took?
That's not it.
Jeez.
No, because it was on the list. Hey, baby, it was written down. It was ordained. This is something really, really important for me. I was a published writer at this point. I was a public face at the Miami Herald newspaper. I had dated some men I really thought were a little intimidated by me and my success. And I know human nature is such that, women, you know how it is. I knew a woman who pretended to know less about hockey than she did. So she kept asking this guy questions about the game. Right. She wasn't even interested in him.
It's like not being able to open the jar of peanut butter, right?
And I'm like, I finally said, what are you talking about? You taught me all this about hockey. But she was so used to playing that game, pretending to be less than she was or no less than she knew. And it's like, I really don't want to do that, Lord. Let me if I can meet someone who can accept me for who I am, including my successes and yeah, my flaws, but yeah, not to be intimidated. That was super important.
I didn't anticipate getting into this to a deep degree, but I think it's important because I know that Tanana Reeve can be very intimidating, and she has a touch of magic. The way that studios reach out to her, the media just adores her. And, there's a part of me, I know there's a voice inside me that looks at some of the things that happen and kind of say, why not me? How come I don't get that?
No, sometimes it is you.
Sometimes it is me. Yeah. But the point is that I don't want to deny that voice, but I have to be sure I understand a couple different things. First of all, that has nothing to do with my relationship with her. Mm-hmm. Nothing. Secondly, as she said, I've had, plenty of success and interviews and television and, parades and all that good stuff. So that voice that says, why not you? Why not you?
I'm still looking for my first TV credit,
So it's,
as a writer,
you have to, it isn't just that there might be a differential in terms of power, but you have to make sure that both sides are going to be comfortable with that. It isn't just men being uncomfortable if they don't have as much power. It's also women seeking men with at least their level of power.
Right.
I've never heard a single woman in my entire life say, I'm looking for a short man to date. I've never heard anybody saying
maybe
that.
A really short woman.
No, I mean like shorter than she is.
Oh, yeah.
Not even once.
Although there are women who will overlook that, obviously.
Oh, obviously, but they're not looking for it. They just don't.
So
they don't mind it.
If that's important, put it on your list.
Put it on your list. Because, in my list,
yeah.
Intelligence and ambition. I wanted someone who had her own destiny, had her own power. I didn't want somebody just orbiting me. In terms
he
of
has a very, very strong personality, as many of you know. So it would be very easy to sort of fall into a pattern of orbiting Steve. And I didn't want anyone orbiting me, and I didn't want to be orbiting anyone else.
We wanted to be orbiting each other.
Yes.
We wanted to be orbiting each other. There was a certain, there were physical things. She had, I wanted someone who was physical, who worked out, because that's the same values that I have. And what if somebody had lost their legs in an auto accident? They could have the same values, but not be able to do it. I could adore that person.
Okay, real talk.
Yes.
My previous boyfriend, that 4-year relationship, we didn't do so much with the working out, and we did a little too much of the eating. Okay. So I gained 30 pounds in that relationship. Right. And when I was out of that relationship, I lost the 30 pounds. So it's not that there's a number of pounds tied to the relationship, but I had a workout lifestyle. I've had sort of a 3 workout a week kind of, at least ideal, since he's known me. I mean, right? I mean, and he was he was more of like a 5-day-a-week workout ideal. And that was fine. You know, I didn't expect myself to work out as much as he did, but I knew myself.
And nor did I expect
that example and support, or I would fall away from the habits I wanted to keep.
Well, for me, it was not wanting to feel like a freak. In other words, you need, in your home, you should feel comfortable. It's your nest.
Right.
You know, I don't want to feel like I have to justify myself. However much focus I have about my writing, how much ambition I might have.
You were a little shy doing your Tai Chi and working martial arts in front of me.
Tananarive has never really watched me work out the martial arts to any degree. It just has never really happened, but that's more of an accident than anything else.
I see you in the
you see me do some things.
Certainly, you don't want me there like and like, making fun of you. I mean,
yes,
one of the things,
trying to encourage me. Why don't you come back to bed? Why don't you eat this cheesecake
every day? Come on, yoga again. And what's happened is over time, I've started to even improve my own baseline. Like if I was kind of that 3-day-a-week, I've started to move up now. I'm going to add a little yoga in. I was never a regular yoga practitioner. Right. I owe that to Steve.
But you understand that that's what happens. You start hitting towards middle ground, that the people you associate with influence the person you're going to be. So the ideal situation is you put on your list characteristics of a person that you would like to be. This is why, you're not limiting yourself. Let's go over those steps, because it's critical. We could spend a long time on any one of these steps.
Once you get past that heart pounding portion, not that my heart doesn't still go pity pat, and I can still feel his pulse rising at certain moments, but you get into the point, like, who do you want to spend the time with, just hang out with over those long years and long days? Do you have enough tastes in common? So put all that stuff on your list. So number 1 is the list.
Number 1 is the list. And we're going to make sure that you have copies of this, because this is the critical thing. Everything depends upon some version of this. 1, you make a list of everything you want in a partner. Everything. No modifications or settling in all 3 major arenas. Body, mind, and spirit at the very least. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Number 2, you find 1 to 3 people in your circle who come the closest to what you have on the list. Those are the people that you can actually access. Okay. Number 3, you ask them what they're looking for in a partner. Sit them down. Take them to lunch, something, in a way that is safe for them. Make sure that they know that you're not playing games. You're not trying to hit on them. You're trying to understand the game of relationships.
And as an aside, I would add that for those of you who are like, I don't know, that doesn't sound like something I would do, I have to admit that's not something I would have done. Like some hot married guy, if I know I'm thinking, wow, I wish I could really have you. Maybe there's a way to modify it where a couple who's been together for a long time and you can talk to both of them. I mean, whatever it takes to minimize your fear, or perhaps the fear of a spouse, that what's this? You have an appointment to talk to who about what? I get it. It's going out on a limb. So find a way that makes you feel safe and makes you feel that you're within your own ethics.
But what you're saying in terms of going out on a limb, that's important in another way. You see, if you actually talk to someone who at this moment you consider this person is out of my league right now, what are they looking for? in the back of your mind, your fear is at least partially going to be that no matter what you do, what they say is something you cannot be, that you're setting yourself up to be hurt. But that's not the point of the exercise. It's not the point of the exercise. You ask 1 to 3 people, make sure that you have listed things that deal with their body, their physicality, their physical beauty and movement, their ambition and intelligence, education, and their emotional balance and holistic aspect.
I think I must have done this by observation.
That works. It does work. I didn't
have an interview process, but I did a lot of observing during that time. Okay.
I'm just talking about what will speed it up.
Yeah.
Okay. So number 4, look most carefully at the things that all of them say in common about what they're looking for, because there will be similarities. You'll start seeing that their answers will cluster. Okay.
An example would be, let's say all 3 of the people you talked to said they love to travel. And you're someone who pretty much doesn't like to travel that much. So you could sort of say, well, maybe I should just look for people who are more into homebodies. Or maybe you can ask yourself, why don't I like to travel?
Yes.
Why is it I've never been outside of the country? If Groupon's is like $300, round trip, 10 days in China, why? Or not really, but why? Why am I not traveling?
So what will happen is what they describe, especially what they say in common, is what you really want to be. Because what you really want on some level deep in your heart is to be the kind of person who can attract a person like that. Right. Remember I said a lioness needs a lion needs a lioness. Your heart can yearn for things that your ego will not allow you to say out loud.
So if you're yearning for a world conqueror who's out there seeing the world and interacting with it, then why aren't you out interacting with
what fears stop you? Right. What is that? Now, here's the trick. Number 6, and this is so important. It's why the first step is love yourself. And I mean this with all my heart. Love yourself, but start in the direction of being the person who can have the person. Remember, it wasn't ever about getting that particular person. It was about starting to become the person that you were really meant to be, so that you can say to the world, this is who I am. And if you do this, and if you love yourself and accept yourself, then you know you're not all the way to the horizon, that you will never reach the horizon. The horizon, recedes in front of you as you move toward it. But you will be able to accept the love of someone who is an equal distance from their horizon.
And remember where you are now, the person you've chosen as your perfect person, like, wow, if I could just have this person, let me interview them. Even if you're secretly thinking maybe they'll ask me out for coffee, you shouldn't be thinking that. But if you were thinking that, by the time you become the person you're supposed to be based on this interview, you might not even be interested in that person anymore. You might be so far out of that person's league once you have manifested your dream person.
This is establishment of a direction.
Isn't it
not an endpoint?
Kind of true, honey, not to sound mean or anything, right. But that the woman, one of the women you...
Hazel?
Yes. I'm like so much better than her. I'm just saying.
Look, what I will say is that someone I know who knows both of you, said to me not too long ago.
A better match is all I mean.
Yes, not a better match.
Not a better human being.
A better
match. So, but that was where he was then. He, did not see me coming. Trust me.
No, I absolutely did not see Tananarive coming. But understand something. When I talked with Hazel, what I got from her was a couple of different things. I mean, I was afraid that what she would say was that she was totally out of my league. But what it came out was there were a couple of things. One, she's a dancer, incredibly beautiful, and she wanted someone who had less body fat than I was carrying at the time. And I realized that in my depression, I'd stopped running. I'd stopped working out. And also,
that's hard to imagine.
She wanted somebody who had more of a spiritual base than I had. And I realized I had stopped meditating.
And he is absolutely religious about both of those things now. And it
absolutely
has nothing to do with Hazel. I don't think. No, I'm kidding. That has nothing to do with Hazel. It was about becoming the best person
that I can be. That's my path. If I wanted a woman like that,
then he had to become that person.
I had to become this person.
Then be that person.
In being this person, I met this person.
Right.
And now we're together. She doesn't demand that I meditate every day.
No.
That's
trying to keep up with him.
That's how I know who I am. It's like the external rewards we get in life are secondary to the internal reward of becoming the person you were meant to be.
Right.
That you choose a goal such that in order to have that goal, you ask yourself, what kind of person would I need to be in order to have that black belt, that published novel, that this. Who is that person? Is that person someone I want to be? If so, start becoming that person. And the things that you get along the way are secondary to the reward of living your life day to day, being a particular type of person.
And it kind of feeds itself, this whole process, because it's just more of number one, which is love yourself. It's like, oh, wow, I have a better workout routine now. I'm so much happier with the way my clothes fit or the way my body feels. Or
right.
Like, oh, I always wanted to join a reading club, and why hadn't I ever done that before? And it's like, then your life starts to feel kind of awesome as you're becoming that person you think you need to be to attract, guess what? You.
Yeah, it's
That's the
about
person you're trying to attract.
So you understand? So go back to step one. Love yourself. We want you to fall in love with you.
And that love that you have for yourself bakes off of you and enables you to see clearly who's potentially a good match, who isn't potentially a good match. You just can sort through the questions that were so baffling before are answered just at an instinctive level because of who you are and how you're walking.
I mean, people who do not love themselves will be intimidated by you because they will, if you love yourself, they're going to interpret that as saying, I'm better than you. No, they just don't have anything inside themselves that pushes back that says that they're great too.
Right.
And a person who wants to manipulate you, wants to use you, wants you in a codependent relationship,
slow you down,
or a relationship
up,
where they can actually suck your blood.
Mm.
The vampires of the world. I have known men who did this to their wives. I have known women who did this to their husbands. Just suck them of any self-esteem. And if they started trying to build that self-esteem up, it's who do you think you are?
Right. And some of you know this if you've been in relationships where one of you decided to make a change and the other one didn't. Like one of you goes vegan and the other one doesn't. That's a big mismatch and constant sort of temptation back and forth and tension, perhaps. Now, some of you may have been able to make that work, but no matter what it is, whether it's related to diet or exercise or just I want to watch less TV, and be the person who's only watching an hour of TV a day or less instead of the person who's binging. Those are hard habits to be compatible sometimes, and a partner who isn't well matched won't be able to support you. That's not to say that you'll always have the same interests. But when I gain a new interest, Steve is there to support me. Like, I want to start taking acting classes. That's crazy.
Sounds great.
Right? Wow. At this stage, why do I want to take I just do. I want to take acting classes.
Not only that, but when she gets these opportunities, she's going to be interviewed, photographed in the LA Times. There's going to be this, there's going to be that. My attitude is this is your time. That in life, we have times when we shine and everybody sees us and other times when they do not. And, it all comes and goes
right
in time. I want the woman I love to have the best, most intense and magical experience of life possible. And if I wanted anything less than that for her, I am betraying her trust in me.
Well, and Steve, we spend so much time hustling and striving and working that sometimes we forget to live. So part of living is finding old habits, old practices that gave you joy in your youth. He doesn't get to spend as much time sparring and working out with people as he did as a younger man. Now he's realizing, well, what am I waiting for? So if he comes to me and says, hey, I want to start taking more classes, I want to do this and do that,
she'd be all for it.
I'm not like, well, that sounds like it's going to be expensive, darling, and you need to be here with me. I'm like, yay, honey, of course. Do what you need to do.
And because I know she's like that, actually, I don't have that urgency. I mean, I have the rank that I was looking for. I mean, 3 different martial arts, but I miss the camaraderie. I miss the movement. I miss that thing, the same way that, I want time to write. I want time to be with my family. It's just, there are people who I love, who I want to take care of. Tananarive understands these things. She supports me in wanting to stay connected to the people I love, the things I love. I want to do the same thing for her. You want someone who understands you where you are, the mountain you are climbing at, the speed you're climbing it, along the trail that you have chosen. And you deserve that.
Right.
And you have to love yourself enough to trust that no one person who does not feed those hungers is going to be better for you than all the other choices in the world that you might encounter. Because all you really have to do is head towards being that person and then find some amplitude. In other words, what is it you do that will take you into the public? Are there clubs you could join? Who are people you can associate? Like to go to classes in dancing or yoga or this or that somewhere.
And for some of you, even online dating sites.
That's
I know
right.
It sounds scary, but I know so many people, even people who are older than I am, and back after the loss of a first marriage or the death of a spouse, who are actually meeting people on these sites. And I certainly did use personal ads a little bit when I was single. Not too great effect. But again, even a date with someone who shows you something you don't want can be clarifying, right? Or that you can trust yourself to realize, oh, I don't feel obligated to make a second date just to be polite. And I don't have to respond a certain way just because someone is pushing for sex and I'm not ready.
Right.
It's like, that's like taking off your training wheels, so that, learning how to date is an art unto itself.
And I say that what you do is you look for people who have interests similar to yours. Half of those people will have the plumbing that you're looking for. I mean, it's not that rare. It's not that unusual. So what happened with me? It was a writer who liked science fiction. First time I walked to her house, I saw a copy of a VHS tape of Day of the Triffids. I just about fainted. I mean, it's like, oh my God. When I walked, it was like the conference we went to is African American Fantastic Imagination Conference.
Right.
I walked in there into a room full of Black people who liked and knew Rocky and Bullwinkle. That was a completely unique experience for me. Suddenly, I felt like I was home in a way I'd never even known I needed to be home. It was the strangest thing because I was going to sort for my interests, for my geek interests first. And out of the geeks, I was going to find the person most attractive.
And I did not have that DVD there just for show. It was actually, I watched old sci-fi,
That's right.
So we're two geeks.
So that's the basic process. We'll go over this once again before we go on because it's so important. Okay. Make a list of everything you want in a partner. Find 1 to 3 people in your circle who come the closest to your list. 3, ask them what they are looking for in a partner in all 3 arenas. 4, look most carefully at the things they say in common. 5, what they describe, especially what they say in common, is what you really want to be. A person who can have a partner like that. Then love yourself, but start in the direction of your dream. You'll meet the person you're looking for while you're on that path. So let's examine. I want to examine the nature of what it is to be a human being. And the most complex model of that I know, the most complete model, is the yogic chakras. Now, this is from yoga. And it basically, you don't have to believe in 7 energy centers in the body. If you cut a body open, you're not going to find little spinning wheels. But the idea is that there are many different levels. And this maps with Maslow's hierarchy of human needs and other things. But I like it that if you're starting from the bottom, the Sanskrit terms are Muladhara, Svasthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddhi, Anja, and Sahasrara. That it is at the core, at the very base, you've got survival and then sex. This is just a little bit below the navel. The base down here is at the base of the spine. The genitals, roughly, the navel. The genitals, roughly. The Manipura is just below the navel. It's the center of mass in the body. The Japanese called this the hara, and the Chinese call this the dantian. It is the place that you concentrate on when you're doing tai chi and things of that nature. Then there's the heart chakra, anahata. It is emotion, love. There is the throat chakra, vishuddhi, that is communication and learning. There is the brain, the mind chakra, intellect, and there is the spirit. So if you were to use this model and you would say, I want to have a description of someone, I want to know how they survive in the world, basically occupation and so forth, their sexuality, are they very sexually open, closed, this, that, whatever it is that you like.
How important is sex to them in
a
relationship overall?
Let your freak flag fly. What do you really want? What do you really want? Okay. For the first time, be honest. This list is just for you. You don't have to tell anybody else what's on this list, but you need to know.
Yeah, these are all elements that will help you come up with items on your list.
Their physicality, and how do they move their body? To be honest, I'd met Tananarive. I thought she was cute. I thought she was smart, but it wasn't until I watched her dancing and saw how healthy her body was in movement that something kind of went in my mind and said, oh, that's a very attractive young lady. I still was not kind of activated to being interested in
dancing.
And I also like dancing.
Some people like to be outdoors, in the Pacific Northwest. They have a very outdoorsy culture, a lot of fishing, a lot of hiking.
Hunting clubs, hiking clubs, fishing clubs. Where are the people like the person you're looking for? Where do they congregate? Where do they congregate? So then the emotional. What is their relationship history? What is their connection like with their families, their friends? Understand these things. One of the first things that I did when Tananarive came up to visit me for the first time was I sat her down with my ex-wife and my daughter.
He sure did.
and basically said, talk about anything that you want to talk about. I wanted her to know something about what I was like emotionally, who I really, really was. And either she was going to hear the truth from these people, or she was going to find out that I was a fool for putting her in the room.
And they were very welcoming. I think for me, having come from a distance, if there had been hostility coming from the ex-wife and a lot of attitude coming from my stepdaughter, Nikki, I might not have been able to make it work. That might have been like a bridge too far for me. So you have to know, first of all, do you want a partner with children? How do you feel about that? I've been in Big Brothers Big Sisters for 7 years. I knew I also wanted to have a child of my own, but I had decided long ago that it was fine if the people I was dating had kids. That was fine for me. I like dads, so Steve was very much a dad. Those are the kinds of things to think about when you're making your list.
What about the throat chakra, communication and learning? How verbal are you? I'm a very aggressive conversationalist, and I can motor over somebody if I'm not careful, and if they're not careful.
What? He taught what?
I just do. I'm not going to apologize for that, except when I'm around strangers. When I'm around strangers, I should slow down and be careful. But in my home, I want to be able to just kind of let it go. I need somebody who can not just keep up with me, but will push back. I need that, because otherwise I'm going to come across like an idiot. I don't want to dominate anybody, hurt anybody. I want this. I want this friction, that throwdown, verbally, sexually, whatever, just somebody who's going to meet my energy. I need that, or I'll wither. I'll feel like I'm constantly holding myself back.
He is not a quiet presence in any form of the word.
No.
So someone who needs a more quiet presence,
I think that's...
he would not be the guy for her.
I think that's why my first marriage
failed.
Because not that Tony and I did not love each other or respect each other or like each other. It's that she wanted a quieter life. And I am not a quiet guy.
A much quieter life. We have a very loud life. A loud, busy life.
So the sixth chakra, Anja, the intellect, the speed of thought, the amount of concern a person gives to education and expression, the maps of the world, your politics, things like that.
Do they like to read, or if they don't like to read, do they like to learn? I mean, something,
That's right.
Where's the common ground?
And then Sahasrara, your spirit. the person doesn't have to be religious. But the question,
unless it's important to you, that
unless it's important to you, that's right.
They definitely do have to be religious.
If it's important to you, then it should be important to them,
right?
So that you can be walking together,
right?
And so the spiritual arena deals with those questions that go beyond your own lifetime. What are the things that are going to outlast you,
right?
Okay, and so for me, I have a faith in God. I have a sense of life on the planet and the structure, the ethical structure of the universe. I have these things. If Tananarive even needed me to be a traditionally religious person, I could not have been in a relationship with him.
And for some people, just belief in God, that's not enough. What is your denomination? Are you Christian?
Right.
And within Christianity, are you
Baptist?
My kind of Christian?
You're my kind of Baptist.
Or, so it's important because those kinds of things in the beginning might not seem like such a big deal. But if you're hiding something from yourself about how much that actually bothers you, and especially when you have kids, when and if you have kids, it becomes an even bigger issue. So give it thought. Does it need to be something on your list or not?
So these 7 are probably, this is the most complete model of a human being that I know. You could, if you look up the yogic chakras, you'll see this, and there's lots of talk. And yes, Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, same thing. It is about how do we integrate ourselves as we grow, as we move from childhood to adulthood. That process of adulting is going to be a topic that we're going to come back to probably next week, when we try to understand the entire mating game, how it all fits together. But this is too much for most people. So what you can do is start with something that's much simpler. It's just the traditional, click to add title. It's just, whoops. Just
Please stand by.
Just the traditional Greek triad of body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah, Steve can put the chart in the Facebook group.
Yeah, absolutely will. Absolutely will. So at the very least, in terms of body, what is attractive to you? What gets your motor running? What do you like? Because you want to feel like you're with someone you can relish, don't you? Don't you want them looking at you and saying, va, va, voom? Your values need to be the same on that level, especially when you're meeting. Right. Later on, as with time, our bodies change. That's just the truth. But if you don't start with a sense of attraction, where are you going to be in 10 years? Just dead in the bedroom, bed death. In terms of mind, that's intelligence, career, making money in the world, hunting and gathering, problem solving in that sense. And then spirit could very easily be considered to be relationships, love. If it isn't a relationship with God or the universe, it should at the very least be their relationship with others in their lives. Right. So you need to look at the physical attractiveness, the way they make their way in the world, their problem solving in terms of hunting and gathering, their occupation, okay, and their relationships, their love of themselves, their love of other people. If this person does not love themselves, they will make you miserable trying to fill the hole in their hearts.
Are they on the outs with everyone in their lives? I mean, anyone can be unlucky where maybe you're not speaking to anyone in your family because they're so toxic. But are you on the outs with your business partner and your friends? And you've got, who's the common denominator in all those failed relationships? Is it the person that you're seeking? Or is it in some cases you? Is that part of loving yourself? Like figuring out how not to strangle relationships or how to nurture relationships.
Yes.
But learning how to recognize patterns in other people is a lot easier once you started fixing your own patterns.
Now, it's so important. It's so important to say that all of this relates to something I will go over later on called the magic formula. But very, very briefly, it is that you must do the things that are under your control.
Right.
That when you're doing everything that is under your control, that's when the universe seems to say, okay, and we'll give you help. But you have to do everything that's under your control. It's related to the a watched pot never boils. It's related to the if you want it to rain, water your lawn. It's as long as you're waiting for the thing, or it's also the when you don't have a job, you can't get a job until you've got a job, and that's what people call with job offers.
All of those things are so frustratingly true.
If you don't,
and even hearing us say it's frustrating is not going to make you feel less frustrated as you're in the process of both trying to prepare yourself to meet your soulmate while you're like, I don't really need a soulmate. I'm perfect already without a soulmate.
So it's what you do is it's a little bit like being a warrior in the martial arts. You cannot be concerned with whether you live or die. You are concerned with doing everything you can to be as perfect as possible. If you focus on your technique being perfect and you remember what your masters taught you about this, and you do not concern yourself with whether you live or die, but just being appropriate in the moment, you are the most likely to live. That if you think about dying, you're going to get scared and you're going to flinch, and the guy is going to cut you in half. Yeah. So see, that's the thing, that it's indirect, that your attention is foveal, is on what is right in front of you, but the rewards are peripheral. They come from the side. And this is true of writing. Everything. It really is. If I'm writing, my task is not to get a sale. My task is to be the best writer I can be. But when I'm preparing myself to be a writer, I have to concern myself with what are people buying. So I have to simultaneously care and not care. Teach me to care and not to care. Teach me to sit still, as the saying goes. So yes, that's where you have to be. That's where I'm sorry, but the good news is this approach does give you all of the power, because you are in charge of creating that ideal you. And the whole thing is that going back, what is it you really want in a relationship? What is it you want from anything? To be happy. The Dalai Lama said the meaning of life is to seek joy. You want a relationship because you think you'll feel good if you're in a relationship. So if you start with the emphasis of I'm going to feel good, you find the way to love yourself, to connect to your joy, then you are starting with what most people think they won't get until the end. It is critically important. If you are already happy and you walk into a room, every head turns, because people want to know, how can I be happy? So you are automatically ahead of it. You're automatically ahead of the people kind of, face down, make me happy. I'm not happy. The world is a terrible place. And if it is true, to the degree that it is true, that the pickup artist stuff and the make a man fall in love with you stuff are faking being healthy human beings, then what we're saying is forget all that stuff. Stop playing games. Don't fake it. Actually be a healthy, happy human being. To the point where when you finally do meet that potential soulmate and there are more demands on your time and talks of the future, you might feel like, oh, wow, I'm going to have to give up a few things to make this relationship work, and be willing to do that. You will have built up enough wealth emotionally that meeting your soulmate means you'll have to actually set a few things aside to make room for that new relationship. It puts you in the position of choosing to be in a relationship rather than feeling desperate that you have to be in a relationship. What are some of the things that you gave up? You hit the compromises you had to make. Well, the hoeing. No, I'm kidding. That's an inside joke. It's funny because I was writing that dating column for the Miami Herald, and once we got engaged, I had to give that up. Number one, what? I gave up my dating column. I gave up the silence of my empty townhouse, which I had come to I got a lot of writing done in that silent townhouse. But of course now, with a little more life experience under my belt, I have even more things to write about. So it's a trade-off. Those are the main things. I mean, actually, I don't know. I seem to have more money when I was single for some reason at times. I don't mean now, but like in the beginning of our marriage, there was like a period where neither of us had as much money as we used to have. And we're like, well, how'd that happen? We're supposed to have what's more. Going on here? You pool it. but two can live as cheaply as one. But you all know how it is. Single folks have a little more income for travel and discretionary, that kind of stuff. And so there's that. But yeah, I don't think about it anymore, honey. I'm just saying at the moment when you're first entering with joy into that relationship, you must also have an awareness of what you have been willing to set aside. And the main thing you're set aside is the possibilities that it could just be anybody. You don't know where it is. It could be that person on the street. It could be someone you meet on a book tour. That's why I stopped liking tours so much, honey.
I'm sorry. Is there anything else? Wait, you said, what did I give up? No, I guess that's about it. How about you, sweetie? No.
Oh, I didn't give up anything, honey. It was all peaches and cream. No, I mean, you know, I had a certain amount of free play.
Listen, I know all about it. They probably know all about it. Yeah, so yeah, I know. Well,
I had a lot of fun.
There's always that, but you know.
But the fact is that I was ready to not have that fun.
Yeah.
What I wanted was something different.
We wanted something even deeper than fun.
My life changed. I certainly gave up a certain amount of autonomy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'd never been bonded to someone who had as much energy and force as you have. And that meant that choices, I had to have a different way of coming to decisions about what I was going to do and why I was going to do it.
Yeah.
Because I was in a relationship with someone who was a dynamo. And not just somebody who loved me, and not just a good person, but a good person with a fantastic amount of energy who was getting notice from the industry in ways that demanded that I factor this in to who I am and how I guess the easiest way to put it is, because we built a family together, my life doesn't work without you.
Well, that's what's happened now. I can't even imagine that girl I was when I look back on it with that big empty townhouse. You know, I had learned to love that solitude, but it's not something I'm craving now. Right. So it sounds like we made the right choice, that we're the right people to be teaching this workshop, luckily.
I can tell you honestly that I've never thought to myself that there was someone out there who I would want more than I want you.
Oh my gosh, me neither.
I mean, it isn't feeling like you're perfect in some abstract way.
What?
We can always find that's right.
Oh, if we look hard enough.
Yeah, we can always find things
really,
to improve.
really dig in there. Yeah.
It's not that I have to dig all that hard.
Pardon me.
But I would have to do more than dig hard to find someone who I felt would be better in my life than you. Yeah. That I have no sense that there's somebody out there that I know that I can be irritated with you, and then I remind myself, she's the best I can do.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, I chose her. I created her from magic.
Yeah, we do feel like we kind of conjured each other. We wrote our lists. We checked them twice. I got everything I asked for, even if it wasn't the exact wording. It was the intention behind the wording. I got all that. And there were a few curveballs in there I had not accounted for because I wasn't specific enough. So be specific. But your homework for this week is...
Make your list. Make your list of what you really, really, really want without any compromises.
Nope.
Now, for those of you who are already in relationships and you're looking to use this to improve those relationships, then coming up with the list of what it is that are there things that you would want, and this is very delicate. Are there things that you might want ideally that you don't have in your marriage? If you begin to create yourself anew, if you begin to kick yourself out of your rut, you will actually create room for the person you're in a relationship with to grow. The two of you are locked in a game. And if you start genuinely being healthy at the same time that you love yourself, then that person will grow as much as they're capable of growing. But what I would not suggest you do is to not love yourself and not extend yourself to them, so that if you change in some way and they cannot change, it does not damage your marriage. It does not damage your relationship.
You both could have changed, right?
You know, I just think that people are doing the very best they can. And once you've created that bond is sacred. And that bond is deep. You cannot be afraid to become whoever it is that you are. If you start feeling like you cannot change because you're afraid of intimidating the person you're with, you will begin to hate them because they're stopping you from being who you are. So better to be in the relationship with that person, but blossom anyway.
And that's where marriage therapy comes in, when it starts to chafe a little bit too much. Well, thank you all. This has been week 2 of the Soulmate Process. Make your list, stick with your list, don't settle. Love yourself, and we will see you next week.
Indeed, we will. Take care, and love is the most important thing in the world. Why not give yourself some? Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend.